This is a training session given to me, Annie Penn, at Smoking Donut Head Office. If you're in hospitality and interested in knowing how to handle split payments, it's very useful.
Okay, so this is the split calculator, which the general use is for larger orders where different people are contributing to the payment of those orders, but they want to contribute based on the line item rather that they consumed, rather than taking some kind of share of the bill that's easily calculated. So all it is a calculator that lets people divide line items and get an appropriate price and do the rounding and so on and so forth. So we've got an order here with a reasonable number of additions on it. So if we check that out and we want to pay by split payment as normal, note the behavior there has changed slightly. You just have to hit split. You don't have to hit split, then submit. Just hitting split is enough. So we're going to split the bill between 5 people. And the total is 180.90. Now, obviously, the gratuity and donation scenarios on this are many-fold. They could want to add their own gratuities. They could decide they're not going to add one. They could add a group gratuity and then split that in some kind of pro rata manner. Basically, if you leave the gratuity blank, it assumes that you will deal with the gratuity at each payment point. So either they enter the gratuity on the card terminal, or they tell you they're going to add a gratuity when it's their turn to pay, and it will take an individual gratuity and then tally the whole lot up for the order. But in this particular example, because it demonstrates how the split calculator deals with this, we're going to set the total. They're going to round the bill up to 200 quid. So it's worked out that we need a £19.10 gratuity because it's got GCSE maths. Now, by default, it just takes the payment and splits it 5 ways, so everybody's paying 40 quid. But if they want to go through the line items, there are essentially 2 ways of doing this. So you've got these icons here next to the total and next to each individual payment. And if you tap that, you get the split calculator. By the way, I should have said you can change the names here. So you can keep track of who's who. You can actually enter their name if you want. It makes it a bit easier to follow. Okay, so the 2 ways of doing this. You can look at the whole. So if we press the split calculator now and look at the whole, we get a grid where you've got each payment across the top and then each line item down the bottom. Note if you've got long line items, it does push the table out a bit. We should probably truncate those. And this thing scrolls and pans. So if you're on a smaller device or you've got a lot of line items or a lot of payments, a lot of splits, then you're going to, on an iPad, you're going to have to do a lot of finger swiping. But that's the nature of the beast, really. So Chris had, you can either go down through what Chris had, or you can go who had. So let's try the who had approach. Who had the tomato soup? That was Chris. Who had the whitebait? Brian. Who had the crispy whipped feta? Who had the chili beef? So, and Kevin didn't have a starter. By the way, these are presented in catalogue order. So you have control over it. But in this particular case, for example, this catalogue's organised so the desserts come out ahead of the main courses, but they will be grouped together however you've done it. So this is fairly obvious how this works. You've got the total value of the line items there. So we had 4 shoulders of pork. So we're going to need, at the moment, that's saying Chris had all of the shoulders of pork. This is essentially a contributor, this number here. So at the moment there's 1. So 1 out of 1 times 66 is 66. So as soon as 2 people have it, Chris's bill goes down to 33, and eventually we end up at £16.50. And it's obviously keeping a tally down here of everybody's bill. interestingly, what it's doing with the gratuity is it's taken the £19.10 and it's pro-ratering that across everybody depending on the size of their bill. So we'll just go and finish this off. Chris had some ice cream. Karen had some ice cream. No, Karen didn't have some. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. 1 rib beef. So who hadn't had you have a rib of beef? And the bottle. Okay, so if you've got a wine, say, and somebody had 1 glass and somebody had 2 glasses, then it's fairly straightforward. You go 1 and 2. And Brian, who had 2 glasses, ends up paying twice what Chris did, who had 1. And you can go as far as you like. I mean, you know, I had 2/29 of that, whatever. So here we got 3 pints of beer, and another beer, and now when all of these are green, you've at least got an entry for each line item, and the total will total to the total of the bill. So we can save that, and it's worked out your splits for you. Now, the alternative is you can go and add the splits for each individual. So here's just Chris. And you can quickly see what Chris had here. Or you can go, if you're going through person by person, this is a more efficient way because you've obviously got a smaller, more focused grid. And that's just a different view on the same data. You'll notice that low no ale is green because someone who isn't being shown has paid for it. So you still get a view. You're still looking at the whole data here. You're just able to edit it as it applies to Chris. So, and then you just pay it and you're off in the normal split process. But the benefit you've got is the ability to work these numbers out with relative ease compared with a piece of paper. So the split calculator also appears in the payments option. So the scenario here is somebody's leaving early, but they want to pay for what they consumed. We're now adding an ad hoc payment, as it says, for this order. So the scenario is somebody wants to pay off early, or you've taken a prepayment or whatever, you know, you're just adding a payment to an order without affecting the status of the order. Okay. By default, it sets the amount to the whole current value of the order. A split calculator again. So what this lets you do is you can say, I'm leaving early, but I'd like to pay for the crispy chili beef, please. I'd like to pay for the crispy chili beef, please. Now, this is slightly different because you're not doing the whole group. You're only doing one individual. So you have to have another button over here to enable you to say things like, there were 3 glasses of wine in the bottle of wine and I had 1 glass. Yeah. Okay. So you need these for those times when somebody split one line item. And obviously it defaults. So with 4 shoulders of pork, it says, well, you know, sense would say that they're going to have 1 each. But with something like a bottle of wine where you can split the line item between multiple people, you may have to, essentially you're creating a fraction here. So by putting 1 over here and 3 over here, you've created a third. If I'd have had 2 glasses of wine, 2/3. If I had had a quarter of a bottle of wine, yeah, so that's what you're doing. And I can also add my own. I say, I want to leave a gratuity of £5. So you save that, and now I've got £12.80 to pay, and I can take that payment in the normal way. So that's another place where the split calculator exists. Okay. Yeah. That's that.